This is Nick Driftwood here. I'm going to quickly show you some very quick ways of using false color to help you get a grade. I'm going to show you from the start, V-Log, through to the original with my LUT, the S52 LUT, without any adaptations or edits in the NLE on the color nodes, with false color using just a curve to show the brightness, and demonstrate recovering some of the brightness in the darker skin tones whilst retaining the same kind of level here in lighter skin tones. This is not a thorough method for grading, so don't take this as gospel, because you definitely take areas and mask them out and adjust the skin tones accordingly if needed be. But I'm just showing a very quick overall where we've got the balance and we've lifted the shadows and we put some contrast and saturation back into the image. So let's just quickly show you what's going on here. If I just, we're using, by the way, these preview nodes, and you can select and make new grade versions just by adding grade versions, and then when you're on the clip itself you can just switch between these different versions using certain keys. On the Mac, for example, I can scroll through them forwards and backwards and back again. So we've got the original V-Log. Let's start from the very beginning. This is the just turn that 4-way off. So we recorded it in V-Log on the S5 Mark II. So this is the original V-Log. And what I like to do is jump to the LUT, put the LUT on in the next node section. So if I just move to the second one, you can see here I've just put the LUT on, everything else is switched off, no curve, saturation or contrast, and you know it looks pretty good already without any adaptations, because I quite like my own LUT. This is the S52 LUT which I've been developing. This is just one variation. I'm still hoping to get feedback from some of you regarding the color that I've used. I've kind of had to adjust the magentas and a little bit of blues and greens here and there on the new color science of the Lumix S5 Mark II. This was shot in daylight, 5500K. It was getting dark, and we used natural light. There was a window light over here which is being reflected slightly on these two guys and on the white t-shirt, but it's quite dark actually, and I'm quite pleased with just what came out the camera with the LUT on. So after obviously exposing it correctly in camera and using the false color LUT to adjust accordingly. But if you want to go into an NLE like Davinci Resolve, whatever, you can use false color. And if I switch this in and now go to the next section here, I've switched in false color on the V-Log. So this is connected to my a curve, and here I can, if I just reset this, when you're looking at these version 3 is the false color. You can see we've got false color in operation on the full screen, and if I switch to the curve now, I can play with the highlights and shadows with a simple S curve. Now this is the highlight area, this is the shadows. You can see we're a little bit to the left, a little bit underexposed on certainly on the shadows. I want to bring that up, so I'm getting greens on the black skin tones. I would normally zoom in, but I haven't got time, but you get the idea. And so I'm pushing the shadows whilst keeping an eye on the skin tones here. If it's too high, you can see it's going to go into the red and the yellow. So if you push into the reds, you're looking at a white level clip from about 97% or more. So I've set this to -3% off 100, so it's at 97 on the reds. The yellow is set to around 94 to 96. So you're going to get yellow if you get into 94, 93 to 96 IRE. You're going to get a color of red on the false color if it's 97% or more. If it hits the pink, which is one stop over neutral gray, that's roughly kind of where a lot of white skin tones fall, 48% to 51.8, and you're looking pretty good. And then anything beyond that is light gray, so 52 to around 78 is where skin tones can fall. You're going to see that get into the light grey areas, and you should be good to go, as long as they don't clip in the yellow and the red. With the darker skins, you're looking more at actually a neutral grey area, 42% IRE. You know, it could be 38 to 44% in the greens for a darker skin tone, which is where they often fall, even darker if they got very, very dark skin. So even lower. So keep an eye on that. If it gets too low into the 10% to 13.2%, you're going to see blue. And then the black level clip is actually between 7.3% IRE to 10.3. So you're going to see purple. So that explains what's going on in false color. To demonstrate that, you know, I've pulled or pushed the highlights to show you the red and the yellows, so you know roughly where you are. And if I'm going to destroy the blacks and clip them, we're into the blues and we're getting into the purples now. So it's you know, you can see by looking at a waveform what is going on here when I'm destroying things. Yeah, clipping and the red, and lifting from around 120, about, you know, 7% we need to be for the blacks, above and above rather. So about 7% and above on the blacks. So I'm lifting the shadows, I'm taking down the highlights, and my end result actually ended up like so. If I move to my final grade, so I've got a curve which I went for here. I've got the LUT engaged, saturation. I've just given it a shot of saturation there, and then a little shot of contrast, well, quite a big shot of contrast there as well. You can see what's happening there. If I lift that or take it down, keep an eye on the contrast because you can destroy the colors and skin tones if it gets too much. And then you can always return to the curve and adjust accordingly. Check it with the final, the false color if you need to, just by switching that on. And you can see the difference between the two there now on the final grade versus the V-Log. And I'll just turn that off. Show you what we're kind of getting to. You can see I've lifted the darker skin tones, tried to retain the highlights as they were without overshooting on the white t-shirt. And if we show the four-wayer on these different versions, we can kind of A/B between these two. So if I just shoot back to that one, whoops, in fact we'll have both these on screen. You can see how much I've lifted there on the darker skin tones. We probably haven't got the same contrast levels in the terms of the leather jackets, but we've kind of retained and flattened a little bit this look. So perhaps not taking a bit of contrast out on the final one. And you can see, you know, we can always punch it in a bit more or adjust the curve if we need to, without destroying, you know, too much. This was a night shot anyway, so you can adjust accordingly. Try and keep these curves smooth as possible, S-curves, and keep an eye on the waveform. And of course, you know, when you're looking at skin tones, it's often good to you know, zoom in or take a mask of the various skin tones and check it on the vector scope. In a very, very rushed way, let's just zip over to the lighter skin tone fella, chuck him over here, and back to the color. and you can see, you know, it's pretty similar. We go full screen, a little bit more improved, and this has probably got a bit too much darkness, but you can now see a little bit of hair through here, and certainly the darker skin tones are coming through just by using this false color and pushing it and checking things. Keep it quite smooth. Maybe bring back a bit of night. Take a bit of contrast off. Saturation, we can push that a little bit, not too much. And I'm looking at my original. Back to the curve. But I'm going to delete that. I only like using a few of these. So we've got a little bit more brightness between the two, which is what we're trying to get for the black skin tones. And then if I jump back to full size quickly, just reset that. Back to color tab. Show you these two. You can see them a bit brighter here, a tiny bit brighter. Let's just check that skin tone to that one. See the differences in false color, what I've been doing. Back to the curve, and you know, we can bring that up a little bit on the highlights, certainly on the shadows. Get a bit closer to our original false color, what we liked. And just switch her off, see what they're like together. And there we have it. You know, it's not perfect. I'll spend a bit more time on this, but we've certainly lifted the dark tones, and whilst we would spend a bit more time on the lighter tones. So that's the original, but just the LUT on. Looks great. It's been measured, this LUT, so I think it looks really good. A little bit dark in the skin tones. You know, you can see how much lighter there is on the. So S curves, get to use them, pull it out a bit more. You know, you can really get close to the original, but improve the tones by using, you know, false color, checking that, you know, everything is working. And there's the difference there. I've just set between the two, keeping that night look whilst retaining more balance. Very subtle. In fact, we're taking a bit off saturation. If you want to push it a bit more, you're welcome to. Contrast, 1.150. Curve, there's the curve. So a simple S curve to bring it back. A little bit more light now around this area below the hat, and you know, a little bit more detail in the beard. Whereas the white guy, the lighter skin tones, you know, not too orange. I've taken a bit out of that, and it's looking pretty good. Just jump back and reset that. Boom. Then jump back to the color tab, and you can see that, you know, we're very similar. We've taken down the highlights here, but we've pushed the shadows, a bit more detail in the blacks, and you can always drop a bit more contrast in or whatever. But you know, it looks pretty good, and it's still popping. But yeah, as I say, back to the contrast tab if you feel that if you overdo it. Let me just show you what happens. That vignetting look, that dark areas, the lens begin to come into play. So you got to be careful on contrast, but you can still make it pop, and you've improved the lighting, and the essential areas look great. Okay, thanks for listening.